Hey Dad, when it comes to hauling on roads like the ice road in Alaska, what is the key to going down those big mountains and going up them without like breaking loose or, sliding off the mountain? Like, is it just not smashing the brakes or smashing the gas? How do you keep control?
Um, well, when you're going up, the way that you keep from spinning out is if you know, keep your RPMs up. And if you start to feel it spin out, you got to be able to feel it. You gotta know your truck. And if you start to feel it wiping its feet, is the term that's used. Then you got to let out of it. Which, if you're loaded really heavy and you're not going really fast, could mean also dropping a gear or two. I had a situation like that happen to me on the shelf. I was hauling with what we called super bulkers, and they're 5-axle bulkers, and they load them down. The trailer was already really heavy, but it was about 113. Pulling the shelf, that's a really hard hill to pull. And when I started to wipe my feet in the first corner, and I dropped a gear, and I actually dropped. I was in fifth direct, and I had to go to the low side, so I already knew I wasn't quick enough, so I went to third direct. And even in third direct, I wasn't able to catch the momentum, and I came to a stop. I mean, you're not going to go for second or first when you're loaded that heavy or anything like that. So, that's the situation you're trying to avoid, is being in this position where the whole entire rig has come to a stop. This one in particular, I remember vividly because I had a giant scare on this one. I was, jacked there on the hill, and when I got out to throw the chains on, I had got them all over the tops, and I was just getting ready to get in the truck to roll back over my chains, and she popped loose and slid about 10 feet down the mountain. Scared the living shit out of me.
Didn't you have Matt holding the brake when that happened?
No, that was a different time. I mean, so many times. Man, I miss that road, but I don't regret that I am not driving it every day for sure. But this particular time, she rolled down the hill a little ways, and she didn't roll, mind you. The brakes stayed locked. She slid. And I'm super lucky that it grabbed and locked back up again. And I was able to get the chains on, and I actually just backed it back down because I wasn't very far from the bottom. And chained up the rest of the tires and went up the hill just starting out in fourth gear. Anyway, and then basically stayed in fourth gear to the top. So when you're coming down, it's kind of, obviously it's the opposite of that. And what you're trying to keep from doing there is breaking loose. So in a way it's similar, but the best way to keep from breaking loose is to not let the RPMs get too high while you're jaking. You want to jake as hard as you can, but without the jakes breaking you loose. That's why those oil retarders are so good. Electromagnetic retarders are so good because they work entirely on friction. And when the friction becomes low enough that it would have broke the tires loose, there's no friction left, so they allow it to free roll. Jake brakes don't do that. They'll cut out when you lock up, and that's the scariest thing. If you get in a position where you're coming down the mountain and your Jake brakes lock your tires up, the Jake brakes will cut out, and while you're trying to gather it up, the Jake brakes will come on again, and it'll keep happening to you, and you're trying to gather it up. Next thing you know, you went from doing 20 miles an hour putting down the hill, and you're doing about 45 now, and you ain't going to be gathering it back up, and now you are trying to control a wreck. That is actually a term that the guys in Alaska use for describing driving the haul road, is the entire trip is a controlled wreck. And I think there's a lot of validity to that statement, because the entire time you can't fight the weight, and that's what guys in Alaska learn. You cannot fight the weight. You can't fight it going up. You can't fight it going down. You just got to let it loose. You got to know the limits of the truck. And the big thing is learning your route, especially for the Alaska haul road. You kind of get a feel for where you're at, and okay, I've been holding the truck back. I haven't broke loose. I'm only doing about 22 miles an hour, and now I'm at the point on the hill where I can kind of start to let it go. And I can grab gears. By the time I hit the bottom, I'm doing 70 again, right? So you got to know your truck. If you're going to drive in crazy shit like that, you have to know the limits of the truck. You have to understand the inertia when you're loaded. It's just like when I would haul fuel. I would drive differently when I hauled fuel than when I hauled a bulker, or when I was hauling pipe. You know, the fuel moves around, and the sand and the bulkers, it's just dead weight, and you're really, you know, they have long tongues, and it makes the whole truck act different. The most times I ever spun out in one trip, I'll just give you an example. I was hauling a 14,000 pound spool, but the spool, all the weight was on the very end of the trailer. So even though I only had a 14,000 pound load, it was pulling up on my drives, and that was the most miserable trip of my life. I thought, oh, man, 14,000 pound load, I'm gonna make good money on this one. I'm gonna burn new fuel. I'm gonna run up. I'm never gonna spin out. And the opposite happened to me. I had to have a grader chain up to me on Adigan Pass and pull me up to the top so I could come back down the other side. And it was because I was so tail heavy. So, you know, back when I used to run the haul road, I would, you know, and all those guys, they have a scale, and guys will roll across the scale. They'll see what they weigh. Maybe you need to move your fifth wheel plate to get more weight up on the drives, or maybe you need to move your fifth wheel plate to get more weight up on the steers. And so, you know, all that stuff's important. You know, guys down here in the lower 48, they don't even think about shit like that. They just drive the truck, you know. Up there in Alaska, those guys are checking how their load weighs and all that. They got to make sure they have enough steer weight, so when they're going around a corner at 70 miles an hour, you know, they don't slide. If you have enough weight on the front, and it's a nice crisp cold, if it's 30 below or something like that, you can go 70 miles an hour around a, you know, 40 mile an hour corner. It will stick. And so every single guy in Alaska has a tech in his truck that's telling him what the temperature is, and you're monitoring the temperature all the time. Guys will be asking each other when they're going past each other, hey, you know, because this guy's going this way, that guy's going that way. You're like, hey, what's the weather like, you know, 2 hours from now? Because you're going straight up, the weather's going to change all the time. And the guy's like, oh, when you get to the knob, it gets real warm up there. It shoots all the way up to about 40 degrees, so you might want to chain up, right? So, you know, the temperature is going to play a lot of the role. Ideally, you want it as cold as possible, you know, right around 40 below, 50 below. You know, you can really rock out and get your truck moving. So, anyway, that's pretty much it.